welcome back to the Unfleshed podcast. This is episode 8, and today we're bringing in Thomas Malafarina, which is an author of books such as 99 Souls and many more. Welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me. You bet.
You want to go ahead and start it off, Shane?
Well, I've been skimming through some of the books you've written, and one in particular caught my interest right off the bat. If you would share with me a little bit about it, eye contact. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, that was an experiment in darkness. It's probably one of the most dark and depressing books I've ever written. So much so that I couldn't wait till it was over. And when I wrote it, somebody said, "Oh, I wish it would have been longer." And I thought, "No, not me. That was quite long enough." I had never, prior to that, I had never seen Jacob's Ladder. You know, the movie Jacob's Ladder. Yeah. And somebody who reviewed it and who interviewed me said that it reminded them of Jacob's Ladder. And I said, "Geez, I got to watch that movie and see what it's like." And it was kind of bizarre like that, but not really, like that. But I understood where he got that from. It's about it really starts with a guy waking up in darkness, and he's just not sure. Is he alive? Is he dead? Where is he? It's complete darkness. And it fades in and out. Periodically, like every few chapters, he wakes up and he's in darkness again. Sometimes he can remember, sometimes he can't. And there's a whole series of things that happens to him throughout the book. But the reason it's called Eye Contact is basically he sees creatures, beings that kind of like zombies. I don't know what you would really call them. Creatures that see him and are out there among us, but we don't see them. And when he makes eye contact with them, if he does that, and for some reason he's the one who could do this, if he makes eye contact with them, then that opens up a portal and they can come into our world. And one particular demon chases him throughout the whole story. And it just happens my publisher, his wife, thinks that's like, she loves it but hates it at the same time. She gets mad at me every time I bring up the subject. She said, "That book made me so mad." Because at the end, you still don't really know. I left people hanging. You don't know, is he alive? Is he dead? Is he in a coma? Is he in hell? Where is he? You don't know.
Fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and it was dark. It's hard to be in a place that dark for a long time,
Oh, I bet so, yeah. And so it sounds like to me a lot of times you kind of, was that your intentions of putting almost like yourself in a situation like that? Or?
I do that every time. I'm always in my books. I'm always. Part of the reason, one of the big reasons I got into writing in the first place was I'm a big horror movie fan. I love horror movies, and I have a big collection of them too. And most of them are horrible for the wrong reason. They're just not any good. They're just terrible. And I found myself sitting here saying, "Oh, man, I would have done this or I would have done that differently." I bet you for the last 5 years I've hardly even watched a horror movie because when I'm writing a book, that's my horror movie. That's what's going on. And if you ever read my stuff, you'll see that I put a lot of detail in because I want the people who are reading the book to see what I'm seeing in my head, to see the scene played out, as I see it. In other words, I'm watching a movie, and the funny thing is, I never know how it's going to end. While I'm writing it, 9 times, eye contact was a prime example. I had no idea where it was going. Most books that I write, short stories, I start them out, and halfway through it, I'm like, "Wow, wonder where this is going." It's like, well, you're writing it. You mean you don't know? It's like, no, I don't know. I don't know where it's going. So, yeah, that's what I do, and that's where I get the pleasure out. And the stress relief. I have a busy life, and this gives me, a lot of stress relief.
Awesome.
That's exactly, kind of how I started out with all my writing and stuff. And still to this day, I can plan it out, but by the time I get to that ending, it's nothing like I had planned. It always goes a whole other route. Well, with you leaving everyone hanging with eye contact, is that something that you plan on doing a sequel for?
That's what somebody asked. They said, "Is there going to be a sequel to that?" And I said, I don't know. If I get bored, maybe. It's very rare that I do sequels. Now, last year I came out with a book, Dead Kill, Book 1, The Ridge of Death. And that was supposed to be a one and done. It's a zombie book. Now, it's the only zombie book I ever wrote. I always swore I'd never write a zombie book because everybody's writing zombie books.
Right.
Unless I could do something different. And then I wrote one story and another story and another. Before I knew it, I had about 7 zombie short stories out there. And each one was looking at the genre a little differently. And, excuse me, and then I decided, well, maybe I'll just do a once and done book. I'll just do this book. And then about 3/4 of the way through it, I'm thinking, this could make a series. There could be another one, too. So I just sent the second one to my publisher now. He's got Dead Kill Book 2, The Ridge of Change. And I'm thinking about a third. But usually I don't plan, like when you say it's sequels and stuff, I just write what I feel like, you know. That's why what I usually do is I'll write a novel, and then I'll write a bunch of short stories and release a short story collection, and then maybe another novel, because I don't know about you guys, but I really get bored. And that's why I think people get writer's block, because they sit here and they say, oh man, I got to get this novel done. And they don't have any ideas. It's like,
I can relate with you on that. I prefer to write novels myself, but it is easy to get lost in it a little bit. And so I definitely can sympathize with you on that, for sure. But
the nice thing about short stories is it allows you to put that novel down and do something completely different, and then maybe another one completely different, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, I got to get back to that again. And then you look at it, it's like, oh yeah, why don't I do this? And it's a whole new, fresh outlook. And
I have to agree with you on
yeah, so usually by the time I got one novel done, I have enough short stories for another collection. And that's why I usually stagger them, a novel and a collection. Sometimes 2 collections and then a novel. That's like when TJ did the Grin anthology. It was so cool because it was just a cool challenge to have somebody, just give you a little bit of information, and then you got to make a story up from that. And it's like, I don't know if I'm heading where he's heading and wants me to head, but I'm just going to do it and see what happens. He'll either say, man, you're way off base, or, this is what I was looking for.
Well, what I thought was very awesome about that is, whenever I actually sat down and started writing or reading that, it was almost like I did write that. I was because it's like we talked on the phone earlier. That's kind of how me and you got introduced. Anyways, like y'all are about the same level on skill set as far as what you're doing, and so that was the first time I actually ever read anything of yours, and I was just like, wow, that's exactly like a way I would have taken that character.
Well, that's good. I had no idea, and I've done that for other people where they give me a few things, and it's like, let's see what happens. They'll like it. If they don't like it, I still got a story, so that's what we'll do. We recently did. I was part of a clown anthology that. What's it called? Oh my God, I'm in like 30-some anthologies this year. It's hard to keep track of it all.
Yeah, I was about to say, whenever I looked up your Amazon earlier, you actually had a lot of anthologies you were part of.
Yeah, there's a lot that I'm part of, and part of the reason for that is my publisher, Sunbury Press. They're real cool with letting me take my stories and put them in, these for the love type anthologies, because it gets your name out there. People recognize it. When you got a name like Malafarina, you don't see that a whole lot. So people see that, I recognize that name. Now, if I could turn it into money, that would be pretty cool. But yeah, obviously, since I had to talk to you after work, that didn't happen very often. But it's neat. I do it for the love of it. I do it just because I just love writing.
That's good. That's good insight. I appreciate that. I also read a little bit about that you also do music.
Oh yeah. I've been a musician my entire life. Started playing guitar when I was, maybe 12 or 13, and played in bands during the early 70s. I graduated in 73, and then when I got married, started a family, I quit. I didn't quit playing. I played at home, but I quit playing out. When you have wife and kids, you don't want any of this 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock coming home stuff, smelling like smoke and everything like that. And then in between there, I got divorced. I got remarried, another family, and my wife Joanne said to me, you keep talking about when you were in a band. You should get in a band again. So I don't think you want me to do that. So she said, oh, yeah, I do. I think you should do that. So I waited until the kids got older and then started playing again. And then I was in a couple bands and then blues bands. And then in 2006, I started my own band, Blues City. That's a 3-piece or 4-piece now, electric band. I play bass, do vocals. We have drums, guitar, and harmonica. And then about 3 years ago, we started Whiskey Creek with a K, and that's all acoustic. And I get not to play bass, but to play my 6-string acoustic instead. So I play a lot of weekends. We don't go crazy and book like maniacs, because I don't. Then it's not stress relief. Then it's a job. This is just to be fun. So we go out.
It's awesome. And it's also good that you have a supportive wife and family. That's
Yeah. You're out of Pennsylvania. Do you actually have like a pretty good support group there, or I mean, where's your main support? I guess come out of.
You mean from a writing standpoint?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't sell as much as I'd like to, but I guess who does? Who does? I don't keep a whole lot of track of that. I just wait every 6 months. I get my royalty statement, and I look at it and say, oh, could have been more than that, but I still got to go to work the next day. But I don't really know. I'd say there's a lot in Pennsylvania. Some people in other states, I don't hear a whole lot from people. I'm not sure where my readers are from. I don't, unless somebody contacts me on Facebook or something. It's a very solitary thing. I don't have time to play on Facebook a lot. I don't have time to. I work, like I said, I work full time, playing 2 bands. I got a wife. I got 3 grandkids, 3 kids, grown kids. And
how do you find time to balance all that?
Time management. Time management's the key. See, everybody asks how do I keep from going crazy, and I'm not sure I haven't kept going crazy. My job is senior manufacturing engineer for a corporation in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I do manufacturing engineering. I program CNC mills. I don't know if you're familiar with CNC technology. Technology is computer-controlled mills. And that's what I do for a living. So that's very left-brained. And you have to be good with time management, project management, the whole 9 yards. The real me is right-brained. And that's what if you could see my garage is a nightmare because it's just full of junk everywhere, which is how my brain is. My right brain is once a year, I have there's a local haunted house in 2 towns over that it's not one of these that's for profit. It's a nonprofit organization. It raises money for the community, and I build horror scenery for the haunted house. And they come once a year with a truck, and I donate a truckload of stuff to them. So that's in my garage, and then I do cartooning and I do horror art, and then the right side lets me do the music and lets me do the art, writing. The good thing is the left side allows me to manage my time, and that's what I do. I just, everybody says, well, where do you write? Well, I don't sit and write like this. I'm at my desk now, but I don't sit. This desk is in the middle of my living room, so I don't sit and write. I have notebooks in my car. If I'm going to get an oil change, I pull into the oil change place, I take my notebook, I sit down and I write. Waiting for the doctor's office, I sit and I write. You just fit it all in, and then I stack up my stuff here to be edited. And when my wife and daughter decide to go out shopping somewhere and they leave the grandkids here, I let them keep busy, and I sit down and I edit. I go to bed at night, and whatever book I'm working on is right next to me, and I'll sit and I'll edit that before I fall asleep. It's just time management.
Wow.
I don't watch sports, I don't watch football or baseball or anything like that. But then on top of that, we do tons of yard work. We have a new I just built a bunch of. I built a new pond in my backyard, fire pit, and a patio around that. So
I saw that. That's actually pretty neat.
oh, yeah, that's right. I put that up on Facebook.
Yeah, it's like a little goldfish pond or a little koi pond or something. Yeah, that's pretty neat.
I really gave my wife a coronary because she said, I just turned 60 in July, and she said, you shouldn't be out in the sun digging a 8 by 13 by 2 foot deep hole or 3 foot deep hole in solid clay. And I said, there's a lot of things that could have killed me that didn't yet. So,
so you definitely when you have your mind set on something, you're going to do it. So that's a positive as well. I mean,
you gotta focus.
And what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah.
So, where do you see your career going in about the next 5 years?
Well, I'm hoping. My plan was I had a 10-year plan, and I started publishing in 2000. Where are we now? 2010. I started publishing, and all those books that you see, whatever, 13 of them or wherever they are, they all have been written and published since 2010. I try to get 2 to 3 out a year. If I get 1 out, I get 1. If I get 3, I get 3. Whatever. My goal is, well, actually, it would have been nice by 5 years, but that didn't happen, so now I'm going to shoot for 10, is in 10 years to have some nice supplemental income coming in, because in reality, I'll probably only work at my job for another, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 years, and then I'll probably never retire, but I may semi-retire. My goal is to work like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and have long weekends to do things, to write, to go places. I think any of us that think you can just, I think the days of just retiring and sitting around, well, it would never happen to me anyway. I'm too busy to sit around. But, I'm hoping that, we get enough people out there who know who I am and like my stuff and want to buy it. But if they don't, I'm still going to keep writing. And as long as somebody's willing to publish me, I'll just keep writing. Because I get more out of it than money. Like I said, writing itself is its own reward, and that's one of the reasons I went and found a publisher, was because I didn't know if it was any good or not. You write something and you think it's good. Yeah, I really like this. And of course, my wife doesn't read anything I write. She doesn't want to know that the guy she's sleeping next to for the past 24 years can write that kind of gory crap. She doesn't read anything. But I've had relatives that have read my stuff. Yeah, that's really good, but is it really good? I didn't know. So I contacted several publishers, and this one publisher, Sunbury Press, was primarily nonfiction, history, stuff like that, and they were expanding the business and wanted to try out horror, and they gave me a shot and published my first 3 books, and have been publishing me ever since. And they have a couple horror authors, myself, Keith Rommel, who's from Florida. They just finished, the company in Hollywood just finished making a movie of one of his books, The Cursed Man. That's supposed to come out in October, and they got a couple people that write horror for them, but they're primarily not a horror type house. But hey, they publish me and like my stuff.
So are they like a fairly, I guess, bigger publishing company, or?
Well, they were small. They're getting bigger all the time. When I first started with them, they were smaller. Then they actually got really big and had well over 200 authors, and were coming out with like 50 books a year. And it just got to be, too much. And they had a lot of books out there that weren't selling, a lot of authors that, weren't helping promote their stuff. And so now they've cut back on some of their authors, so that they're just trying to keep the ones that they can move books for, which is really, it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sure
but it's funny with the funny thing is, when I first looked into publishing, I looked at self-publishing. But what I had back then, when I looked at it, it was all these vanity press houses that you had to buy, like, you give them a ton of money, and you get a garage full of books, and you got to figure out how to move them. And I said, oh my God, that's crazy. But as my publisher tells me, right now in history, this is probably the easiest time in the world ever to publish a book with all the tools available online. But it's also the hardest time to sell one. Because everybody's got a book, everybody's an author, and whether they're any good, whether they're edited properly, they're out there. You know, so people get noticed.
I've only been writing for a little over 2 years, and I've already noticed that it is it's so huge. I think it's the social media that you have so much access to so many different parts and pieces, and I mean it's just wow.
Oh yeah, tons.
It's like I was telling TJ the other day, like with zombies or erotica. I mean, look at the big thing right now is erotica, and you're going up against, and I'm not saying going up against for like money or this and that, but because you like to write, but you are going up against
millions,
hundreds of thousands of people. You're shot. You know.
Yep, you're just one more, little drip in a full of water, and it's really hard to get noticed. It's really hard to make people notice. And it's funny because and everybody says, well, I've had people ask me about other writers. Don't you feel they're competitors of yours? And I said, no, not at all. Just like, and that might come from being a blues musician. A lot of rock musicians feel that other bands are competitors, but blues guys are real easy to get along with. We all sit in with each other and share the stage. It's no big deal. But the way I look at it is this. If I push myself, I might get 3 books out a year. And those 3 books could be read in 3 days. So what are they going to do for the rest of the year? Wait for me to write another book? No, they're going to go read somebody else. There's plenty of people out there to if you enjoy horror, there's plenty of people out there that can enjoy all the different horror writers. So I don't think of anybody as like a competitor. I just think we're all just doing what we enjoy doing. If somebody likes my stuff, they'll listen or they'll buy it. If they don't like my stuff, then they'll buy somebody else's. I'm not going to change my style so that they'll buy it. Or I won't jump on. That's why I hesitated to jump on the zombie thing because I love zombie stuff. But it's like, I just didn't want to do the same thing that everybody else was doing. I wanted to find a different way just for myself because I don't like copying. I like doing my own thing.
Original. Yeah.
And I think on that, I mean, it's really hard to bring in like new things. Like Grin, that was like a whole new age type monster, But I mean, when you bring in like werewolves, vampires, zombies, I mean, it's all been done over. So I really think that if you're going to do something like that, you're really going to have to bring your own, sense to the table whenever it comes to that. I mean, if you write something that's just typical, it's really going to be hard for someone to really latch onto that and follow it because it's just like everything else that you've read or watched as far as TV and all that goes. So, I mean, and it's funny you mentioned about zombies and stuff. I've been stating that for quite a long time, and I've had people hit me up forever now about wanting me to do a zombie novels. And so finally, I finally decided that, hey, I will do a zombie novel, but it's going to be my own take at it. It's not going to be like anything else that, everyone else is reading about and all that. And people are going to love it or they're going to hate it. But I mean, that's definitely what I'm going to bring in, to that table because I'm not interested in it. And honestly, as far as something like zombies, and I understand that it's big and it's probably a tough subject for a lot of people, but it's just repetitive. And if you've read one, you've pretty much read all. So, I mean, that's definitely something that, you definitely have to, bring something new to that table.
Right.
Because, I mean, it's really hard to give someone a chance, as far as a new writer, because it's like, okay, I've already read like 15 different, versions of this same style of book, and it's all been the same thing. So what's going to make yours any different, So whenever it comes down to that, I guess we'll boil this down to a question for you. What kind of separates your writing style from everybody else's to where would probably give that reader more of a shot on kind of buying into you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been told now. This is really kind of funny because I'm a big Stephen King fan and I'm a big Dean Koontz fan. Up until a year ago, I never read any H.P. Lovecraft or Clive Barker, and I still haven't. I've seen the movies, but I haven't read any of his stuff. And my publisher, when he first read my first 3 books, he said, "Wow," he said, "this reminds me of a cross between Clive Barker and H.P. Lovecraft." And I said, "Well, that's interesting because I never read their stuff." I said, "I thought you'd say, oh, this is like Stephen King, or this is like, Dean Koontz, who I really admire the way Dean Koontz paints a scene." And I think if there was one thing about my style, there's several things about my style. I try to have a story. I think characters are very important. You need to be able to relate to the characters. They got to be people. And I'm a regular person, so my characters are regular people. I listen to a lot of books. I have an hour commute to work each way. So if I'm reading, it's going to be an audio book. That's how I get my reading in. So I listen to a lot of stuff that I would never read. A lot of mysteries, a lot of classic stuff. And some of the writers where they go in and they talk about all these rich people and all that kind of stuff. And, stuff I can't even relate to. I have a problem with that. So I try to write most of my stories and books. I take regular people, good people, regular people, and put them in impossible situations. Things that, that shouldn't happen to somebody nice like him. Yeah, well, there's a lot of things happen to people that shouldn't happen. The other thing I'm known for is describing scenes, not to the point of being, boring people with scenery, but painting with words and creating a scene so people see what I'm seeing. And then probably, between characters and painting the scene and having a good story, the next is the fun part, and that's the gore. I sometimes, I don't always go for gore, but a lot of times I do, just because people are reading, they're going along, they're getting the story, and they're enjoying it, and all of a sudden, bam, I hit them with something, and it's like, oh, where'd that come from? That's disgusting. Yeah, I know. I usually like to go to a point where I said, well, I think I've gone too far, and then maybe go a little further, just for the fun of it.
So you'll push yourself sometimes too, then, when you're writing.
I'm sorry, what?
You'll push yourself sometimes when you're writing.
Oh, yeah. And I'm just thinking of something I want to tell you. Heck, does it? No, I don't know. It'll come back to me.
Well, I mean, as far as pushing yourself and kind of, going to that next level, do you really have one of those lines that you don't want to cross?
Yeah, there's things I don't do for several reasons. But one thing, I try to never say never, or never say always, because there are two absolutes. I swore one time I would never write a zombie story or never write a zombie book, and now I'm just publishing my second one. So I learned not to say never. I try to stay away from, and that's why I say try to stay away. I don't say never, but I try to stay away from human-on-human violence, because I can get that in the 6 o'clock news. And every day, the stuff I see is more horrible than anything I can think of. The stuff people are doing to each other on the streets is incredible. So I like monsters. I try to stick with. The reason I used to enjoy and do enjoy going to horror movies is because it's kind of like riding a roller coaster. You're safe, but you're scared. You go to a movie, you see this stuff happening, and you get scared for a little bit, and it's like, oh, it can't happen to me. Whereas somebody walking up and shooting you in the head can happen to anybody, and it happens every day. So I try to stay away from the human-on-human stuff now. And you notice I didn't say never, because that being said, I've already done that. I've done that too. But that's just a couple things that I try to stay away from. But I never say, like I said, it could happen. It could happen, and it has happened.
Interesting. I'm going to take a moment here to do something new with the podcast that will be somewhat frequent, and it's called Shout It Out. It's for our guests that we have on our podcast. Basically, I will ask a topic. It's not a question. It's just a topic, and it can be anything, and then our guest gets to respond on that topic. Topic to Thomas Malafarina is tapioca pudding.
I love tapioca pudding. I haven't had tapioca pudding in probably maybe 10 years, but tapioca pudding is good. It's weird because it can poison you if it's, isn't that true? If it's not prepared properly, I think tapioca can be a poison, but it tastes really good, and I love it, and I have not had it in a long time. And now you got me thinking about it, so I'm going to have to bug my wife for some tapioca pudding. I didn't expect that topic. I'm sitting here thinking, boy, I hope he doesn't ask me something controversial because
just random stuff. That's what
that is definitely
is all about.
Now, as long as you're talking about tapioca pudding and it doesn't mean something else, because just about everything now means something else. Usually nodding. So.
All right. Well, you were the first guest that we've had since implementing the Shout It Out. So
do you think I was going to like it, or do you think I wouldn't like tapioca?
I thought you probably weren't going to like tapioca, just because it's a weird thing, like you said. Like it's
it is weird. And I'm surprised I like it because I'm a texture freak. Yeah, if something has a weird texture in my mouth, I can't eat it. It bothers me. And if you think about that, that's like, opening up some fish and gutting it and sucking its eggs out and putting them in your mouth. But I like it.
Well, thanks, and thanks for being the first to participate in that. Really appreciate it.
That was great.
So, I guess if you had to compare your work to absolutely any author out there, who would you really kind of base that down?
My work, David. Boy, it's kind of hard to say. I don't know. I don't know who my work would be like. In some ways, there is a Stephen King influence because I've read so much of his stuff. A lot of my stories and my books take place in a fictitious area in Schuylkill County, Pennsylvania. I was born and raised in the town of Ashland, Pennsylvania, and a lot of my stories take place in the fictitious town of Ashton, Pennsylvania. And so in that regard, a lot of my books and stories tend to refer back to characters in other stories and other books, and they tie to areas in that same region. So in that regard, that's kind of like how Stephen King does with his different fictitious places in Maine. Other than that, I don't know. I don't know who I write like, because as I said, I read a lot in terms of audiobooks, but there's not a whole lot of horror on audio. I wish there was, because I'd be like, if your stuff was on audio, I'd be listening to it tomorrow. But like I go to our library, and they got tons of, but it's always the bestsellers. It's always the well-known authors, and so and that's something else somebody told me. They said that when they read my stuff, it's almost like they can hear it, and that's probably because I listen. So when I finish a story or I finish a book, a lot of times I'll sit and read it aloud to myself to hear how it flows. And sometimes it flows really well, and sometimes it's like, wow, I feel like I have a bunch of marbles in my mouth, and I'll have to go back and rewrite that paragraph or sentence because it's like, it was okay when I read it, but when you try to say it, it's like, it doesn't sound right. And like that's one of my complaints with a lot of Stephen King stuff. When you see it in the movies or you hear it in audio, because he's gotten better through the years, obviously. But sometimes some of the early stuff, the dialogue didn't work. You listen to dialogue and you hear somebody reading it back to you, and it's like, oh, people don't talk like that. They don't sound like that. So I try to have my characters sound like people actually sound. So to make it more real, because you think about it, you're asking a lot out of people when you're writing horror. first of all, you're asking them for their money if they buy your book, and you're asking them for their time to take the time to read it. But more importantly, you're asking them to believe everything you're telling them, to come into your world, accept what you're doing as fact and truth, and then, immerse themselves in your world and become part of it for the time they're reading that book. Which, is hard enough with fiction that is based on reality, but when you got fiction that's based on complete crap that you made up, you're asking a lot of people. It's kind of like a joke. Like if you say to somebody, a nun, a priest, and a rabbi walked into a bar, you got to tell them this joke, and if the first thing you said was, why would a nun, a priest, and a rabbi be together walking into a bar? Well, you already didn't accept the premise of the joke. So as horror writers, we're asking people to believe this totally fictitious, bizarre stuff that we're feeding them. So, it's a challenge, and that's why I try to make my characters convincing. I try to make the scenery believable, because you're asking a lot of people. You're asking them to become part of your, weird head.
Well, one of the things that I've had many people that's compared mine and your work together was that whole fact that both of us bring that little touch of reality into each thing you write. So I mean, it's believable.
Right.
It is something that could happen. So I mean, that is part of that scare factor. It's something that's just like, it's not something that's just off in left field. It's like, shit, that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I definitely can see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
As far as your writing style so far of what I've read, I would definitely say it was an intermix between a Stephen King and a Clive Barker, though.
Oh,
I mean,
that's good.
I mean that's something I get compared to as well. And so I mean that's one of those great things about meeting you in the first place. I mean, as we talked on the phone.
Say something. That ain't a bad one.
Yeah. I mean, and the only other thing that I guess I've ever been compared to, which I'm not gonna say I just write horror. I also have my children thrillers, and it's been I guess pronounced more as like an adult side of R.L. Stein or something. So I would imagine the cartoon type style that you also have going on would kind of fit in that genre.
Yeah, my cartoons they're really bizarre. I haven't done any in probably 10 years. I did maybe 100 of them through the years, and then when I got published by Sunbury, I showed him a few of them, and we came out with a book collection of them. And it's funny because a lot of them are old; they have to be updated. I have enough for another book. I just don't have time to sit down and take the time necessary to make them publishable. If I was rich and could hire somebody to do that, I would. But,
are you doing the illustrations behind them as well?
For what?
Or are you doing the illustrations for them as well?
Oh yeah, no, I don't. I usually come up with our covers and stuff. I usually just come up with a general idea for a cover, and then maybe I'll put something together and send it to them, and then they'll come up with something that looks like it and send it back, and we'll go back and forth till we find something we like. But no, I'm not really that good. At one time, I wanted to go to art school, but I never did. And then maybe I would have been good enough. But I've done illustrations for other people, for friends, which is really weird because it's not like I do really cool horror illustrations or anything that looks like graphic novels or comics. They're just goofy. Goofy drawings that they're funny, but and the humor's funny, but it's like that doesn't really work for horror. I really have to work hard to not make something look silly.
Yeah,
it's my nature.
If Tom, if you had to do one of your books all over again, which one would it be and why?
It would be my first book, 99 Souls. And there's two reasons for that. Maybe three. I don't know. One of them is it's the first thing I ever did, so I have learned so much since then. As a matter of fact, I started rewriting it a little bit, like when I get bored and want to jump around and do something, I'll work on a chapter or two. I started rewriting it because it's the first thing I ever did. There's a lot of things I do better now than I did then. Another reason is I deliberately kept it small, because if you've never been published, you don't want to go in there with a big book. You want to go in with something small that they're willing to give you a chance with, and not. That's something a friend of mine told me. He said you want to keep it small and tight. And that was one. And the other was, as I recall, some of the it needs to be re-edited too. Some of the editing wasn't as good as it should have been, so I'd like to redo that whole thing. There was another reason. When I originally wrote that, I wrote it as a screenplay, and I had put so much detail in it because I was tired of movies. I wanted to write my own movie, so I did this as a screenplay. And I started shopping it around, and I found out I had so much detail in it that they just didn't want a screenplay with detail. They just want, the dialogue. But I wanted the detail because I wanted them to see exactly what I wanted to see. And I guess directors don't like that stuff. So I decided, heck with it. I'm going to take it, and I'm going to turn it into a novel. So I did. And because it was originally a screenplay, it became a novel, and because of the editing and all that, because it was my first one, I just that's the one I'd want to redo. There's nothing wrong with the story. The story's good. Characters are good, but I'd like them to be better. I'd like to expand it, and now that I know how to do all that stuff 5 years later, I'd like to. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
As far as your writing goes and all that, was it easier for you to write more of a novel based, or was it easier for you to write screenplay?
Novels, because the thing about screenplays is you got to be brief. They were interested in the dialogue and just the scene happening somewhere. As I said, I like to paint scenes with words, so I'm just naturally too descriptive for that. Now, could I do that? Yeah, I could probably take one of my novels and just convert it into a screenplay. So maybe someday I'll have to. I sure hope I do. That would be a great thing. I'd love. It's funny. I would love to see my stuff in movies. Yet at the same time, it's like, would I love to see my stuff in movies? Because I've seen so many really good books that became really bad movies.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. I don't know what to expect. But if I did, it'd be cool.
And I definitely agree with that, because I actually, a lot of people don't know, but I actually wrote Deadly Mountain, and it was more of a short story, which actually I expanded on later, which became Obsessed with the Kill. And I actually wrote that as a screenplay.
Okay.
And that was a nightmare. Like, it was so much easier writing the book versus going through and doing, for that screenplay, because everything's so precise.
Yes.
You got to have so much from the margin from the right hand side for this, so much from the left hand side, center of this. This is bold, this is italic, etc.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah.
And then I wrote that is I actually got online and downloaded a couple screenplays and just copied their formats and followed what they did, but put my own stuff in and started learning about it. But you're right, it's a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I had to do as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I also did my short story, which from Satan Claus, and it turned out way longer. But I mean, you're breaking it. I guess. Well, for one, there was so much stuff that had to be added, in order to make it work. Going from book to film. Which, it was recorded, and it turned out very cheesy. It didn't turn out nothing like the short story. And so, yeah, I definitely could see that, going south.
Yeah. Well, I always say that, if you watch TV, you've seen some of these sci-fi channel movies, how bad they are. And I always think to myself, wow, it'd be so cool to have somebody make a movie. But if it was a sci-fi channel, would you say, yeah, make my movie because I really want it made into a movie, or would you think, oh my God, what are they going to do to my movie? Is it going to be Sharknado 2?
Yeah, well, and that's like Clive Barker. He actually produced his first Hellraisers, and so I mean, he put that pretty much spot on to his writing.
Yeah, that was awesome.
but then he ended up selling his rights or his video rights, and they took over, and then it turned into a mess. Yeah. And he did several posts after that. He's like, I didn't touch that. You
Right.
know, I didn't have a finger in that one.
Yep.
So now he actually just wrote the Scarlet Gospels, and so now he's coming in, and this is supposed to be the last book of that series for Hellraiser.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's actually supposed to be coming back in, and he's going to go back into the roots of kind of directing that film.
Oh, that's good.
So we should expect a sequel there. And
I actually bought that.
I'm definitely looking forward to that because, as like you stated earlier, there really just isn't any good horror movies out these days.
No,
We watched
they're
It Follows.
Remakes. Why are they doing remakes? You know,
Yeah,
there's so many good horror stories out there, and they're taking good movies and making bad remakes.
yeah.
I don't get that.
That's like It. You know, that was one of my all-time favorites, and now they're going back and remaking. Well, speaking of that, what is your all-time favorite horror movie?
Let's see, all-time favorite. Well, one of my all-time favorites, I'd have to say, because I've watched it multiple times, is the original Dawn of the Dead. The original George Romero out in Pittsburgh in the mall. You know, I went to see that first when it came out at a midnight show, and I probably watched that same thing I don't know how many times. And it's kind of goofy, it's kind of campy, but that's one I always enjoy. And of course, the Hellraiser series, the original Hellraiser, was fantastic.
That's awesome.
Most Stephen King movies, I liked it. Obviously, everybody had to like that. And The Shining, I actually liked, even though he didn't like Shining. I thought that was great.
That's my favorite by him.
Yeah. And actually, it's funny, having not read, I had never read H.P. Lovecraft, but I liked a lot of those, like From Beyond and some of those movies based on H.P. Lovecraft stuff. I enjoy those a lot. And those are the kind I go back and watch again. And then there's goofy movies that I'll watch again, like Big Trouble in Little China and stuff like that. Yeah, one of my favorites.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Now, I would do a gamble on a remake for Big Trouble in Little China, just because it was, like you said, kind of one of those goofy movies.
Yeah.
I like to see kind of what they could do now with that type, but I love that.
Because so many people love, and that's the other problem with remakes is people fell in love with the originals.
Sure.
And you go and remake it, it's like you're a leg behind right off from the beginning because people say, I'm not watching that, it's not the original. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But lately, I haven't seen too many horror movies.
Oh, we just watched It Follows last night.
That looks like it might be good, but I don't know.
It was horrible. It really was. I mean, the grounds that it was written on, I guess, it had potential.
Yeah,
but
that's what they all do.
Yeah, but I mean, you start watching it and you're expecting something big to happen, and it never happens. Then the ending was horrible. Like, I was pissed off watching the end of it because I'm just like, that's how it ends. It's just like they're walking down the road. I mean, but it starts off with her death, so she dies, but it never even goes through all that.
Yeah.
So it's just like, okay. No. But we're actually about out of time on our podcast here. But definitely
that went fast.
That's what I'm saying, really, already. Dang, I have a lot of questions I want to ask him, but wow.
So I'm afraid we'd run out of things to say.
Oh, no.
Definitely not out of things to say, just out of time for the podcast. Anyways, it was really great having you on the show, and
enjoyed it.
It was definitely great actually getting to meet you.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to call me back again. I'd love to do it again sometime.
Really fantastic. Yeah, again, a lot of insight. I like to hear what you're doing. I took away from this podcast that you are definitely an author who really takes pride in what they do. So I'm anxious. I'm still anxious for the eye contact. That sounded very interesting to me. So hopefully here soon when I get paid, I'll be able to purchase that book for sure. Sounded right up my alley. So I'm not really. I'm just now coming into the horror world, if you will. So, but that's definitely something I'm gonna have to get. So thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing with us and the fans of yours.
Yes. Nice meeting you both, finally. It's cool.
Burn you to the ground, burn you to the ground, burn you to the ground, burn